You know how some people say marriage is about trust? Well, my wife decided to put that theory to the ultimate test at our friend's anniversary party last Saturday night. And man, did I learn something about loyalty that evening. We'd been married for 4 years, and I thought I knew her pretty well. She's always been social, confident, the type who lights up a room when she walks in. That night was no different. She looked stunning in her red dress, the one that always made heads turn. As we walked into the Hilton ballroom where the celebration was being held, I felt that familiar pride knowing she was with me. The party was in full swing. About 60 people, mostly couples from our circle, celebrating our friends' 15 years together. The usual crowd, lawyers, doctors, business owners, all successful people living their American dream. I grabbed us drinks from the bar while she mingled, nothing unusual there. But then I started noticing things. She was talking to this guy near the appetizer table, some investment banker she'd just met. Nothing wrong with friendly conversation, except she kept touching his arm when she laughed. And she was laughing a lot. At everything he said, even the stuff that wasn't remotely funny. I watched from across the room as she tilted her head, played with her hair, maintained eye contact just a little too long. Classic flirting behavior. The kind I'd seen her use on me when we first met. Then she moved on to another group. Same routine, different guy. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just being extra friendly tonight. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But when I saw her practically pressing herself against some real estate developer while asking about his big projects, I knew something was off. I walked over, slipped my arm around her waist, and joined the conversation. She didn't pull away, but she didn't exactly lean into me either. When the guy excused himself to get another drink, I asked her quietly, "Having a good time?" "Of course," she said, that innocent smile I'd fallen for years ago. "Why? Just seems like you're really connecting with everyone tonight." She laughed, but there was something calculated about it. "Are you seriously being jealous right now? That's so unlike you." I wasn't jealous. I was confused. This wasn't the woman I married. Or maybe it was, and I just never paid close enough attention. The rest of the evening continued the same way. She'd find a new conversation partner, turn on the charm, and I'd watch from whatever corner of the room I'd been gradually moved to. She'd catch my eye occasionally, almost like she was checking to see if I was watching, which I was. By 10 o'clock, I'd had enough. Not of her talking to people, of whatever game she was playing. Because it definitely felt like a game, and I wasn't sure I understood the rules. We didn't talk much on the drive home. She seemed energized, almost glowing, while I processed what I'd witnessed. When we got to the house, I poured myself a bourbon and sat on the couch. "You're quiet tonight," she said, settling next to me. "Just thinking." "About what?" I took a sip of my drink and looked at her. Really looked at her. "About loyalty." She raised an eyebrow. "Loyalty? Yeah, what it means. How it works in a marriage." That's when she dropped the bomb that changed everything. "Actually," she said, tucking her legs under herself, "I'm glad you brought that up. Because tonight was a test." "A test?" "I wanted to see how much you trusted me. Whether you'd get jealous or possessive if I talked to other men. Whether you try to control me or have a meltdown." I stared at her, processing this information. "So you were deliberately flirting with strangers to test my loyalty?" "To test your trust in me, yes. And I have to say, you passed with flying colors. You didn't make a scene, didn't embarrass us, didn't act like some insecure husband. I'm proud of you." She leaned over and kissed my cheek, like she was rewarding a dog for sitting on command. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a test of my loyalty to her. This was her testing how much disrespect I'd tolerate. How far she could push before I'd push back. What boundaries she could cross while I stood there smiling. And apparently, the answer was pretty far. I finished my bourbon and set the glass down on the coffee table. "You know what? You're absolutely right about one thing." "What's that?" "Tonight definitely was a test." I stood up and headed toward the stairs. "Good night." As I climbed to our bedroom, I could hear her calling after me, but I wasn't interested in continuing the conversation. Not tonight. I had some thinking to do about what loyalty really meant. And more importantly, who deserved mine. Sunday morning came with the usual routine. She made coffee, I read the news on my phone. We discussed plans for the day. Completely normal, as if the previous night's revelation hadn't happened. As if she hadn't just admitted to orchestrating an elaborate manipulation disguised as a trust test. But I remembered every word. Over the next few days, I started paying attention in ways I never had before. Really watching, really listening. And what I discovered was fascinating. Tuesday evening, we went to dinner with another couple at Cheesecake Factory. Nothing fancy, just our usual double date with people we'd known for years. but I watched her work the room again. The way she complimented the waiter just a little too enthusiastically. How she found reasons to touch our male friend's shoulder during conversation. The prolonged eye contact with the guy at the table next to us. And then she'd glance at me, almost checking my reaction. The pattern was clear now. She wasn't just being friendly. She was performing, testing my limits, seeing how much she could get away with while I sat there like a well-trained husband. So I decided to play her game, but by my rules. Wednesday, she suggested we hit up the sports bar to watch the game with friends. Perfect opportunity. I agreed enthusiastically, which seemed to surprise her. She'd probably expected me to make excuses after her weekend performance. The bar was packed, typical Wednesday night crowd. She immediately gravitated toward a group that included two guys she'd met at some work function. I watched her slip into flirt mode, the hair flip, the laugh, the strategic positioning. But instead of standing in the corner nursing a beer like some jealous husband, I started my own conversations. With everyone, including the attractive bartender who'd been making eyes at me since we walked in. "What can I get you?" she asked, leaning across the bar. "Surprise me," I said, matching her smile. "Something strong enough to handle whatever tonight throws at me." She laughed, a genuine sound. "Rough day, just getting interesting." As she mixed my drink, we talked about her bartending school, her plans to open her own place someday. Real conversation, not the performance art my wife was conducting 15 feet away. When she handed me the cocktail, our fingers brushed. Completely accidental, but I didn't pull away immediately. That's when I felt eyes on me. My wife had noticed. She excused herself from her admirers and appeared at my elbow within seconds. "Who's your new friend?" she asked, that same sweet tone from Saturday night. "Just ordering a drink," I said casually. "Her name's Jessica. She's studying business management." "How nice." The smile never left her face, but her voice had an edge. "Ready to find seats for the game?" We moved to a table where she could keep an eye on the bar, and on me. The rest of the evening was educational. Every time I engaged naturally with someone, male or female, she'd find a way to insert herself or redirect my attention. When I talked sports with the guy next to us, she'd suddenly need help with something. When I complimented our server on her efficiency, my wife would immediately order something else, requiring more interaction. It was control disguised as concern, possession masked as affection. Thursday brought the real revelation. We were at Target picking up household stuff when I noticed her behavior shift dramatically. Around male employees, she was all smiles and helpfulness. With female cashiers, she was efficient but cold. But the moment I started a friendly conversation with the young woman helping us find storage containers, my wife materialized. "Honey, I think we have everything we need," she said, linking her arm through mine possessively. As we walked to the car, I decided to test something. "That girl was helpful," I mentioned casually. "Was she?" I didn't really notice. "Really? You seemed to notice enough to cut the conversation short." She stopped walking and looked at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just an observation." "Are you saying I was rude to her?" "Were you?" The silence stretched between us in the parking lot. Cars drove by. People pushed carts. Normal life continued while we had this loaded conversation next to our Honda. "I don't like your tone," she finally said. "I don't like double standards." That hit home. I could see it in her eyes, the moment she realized I wasn't going to keep playing the oblivious husband role. "What double standards?" "Saturday night you tested my loyalty by flirting with strangers. But when I have a normal conversation with someone, you practically mark your territory." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. "Classic tell. That's completely different," she said. "How?" Because I wasn't actually flirting. I was testing you. And I'm not actually interested in anyone else. I'm just being a normal human being who can have conversations." We stood there staring at each other across the roof of our car. Two people who'd been married for 4 years, suddenly speaking different languages. She got in the passenger seat without another word. The drive home was quiet, but my mind was racing. The game she'd started was becoming clearer by the day. She wanted the freedom to push boundaries while keeping me locked down tight. She wanted to test my loyalty while demanding exclusive access to my attention. That night, as she got ready for bed, I made a decision. If she wanted to keep playing games, that was her choice. But I was done being the only one following rules I'd never agreed to. Time to write my own playbook. Friday morning hit me with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I woke up before the alarm, mind sharp, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about her needs, her schedule, or her feelings first thing in the morning. I was thinking about mine. The revelation came while I was making coffee, the same routine I'd done every morning for 4 years. Always her preferred blend, always her favorite mug ready first, always making sure she had everything perfect before I even considered what I wanted. When had I stopped being a priority in my own life? She came downstairs in her robe, hair messy, expecting her usual morning coffee service. But I was already dressed, my travel mug in hand. "Where are you going so early?" she asked, looking genuinely confused. "Gym. Meeting a trainer at 7. "Since when do you work out in the mornings?" "Since I decided to start putting my health first." That wasn't entirely true. I'd been thinking about joining a gym for months, but had always found excuses. Too busy, too tired. She needed help with something. Always something. Not anymore. The gym was a revelation. Not because of the equipment or the trainer, but because for 1 hour, I focused entirely on myself. My goals, my limits, my improvement. No one else's agenda mattered. The trainer, a former Marine named Carlos, put me through a brutal session. But when he said, "You've got more fight in you than you think," I knew he wasn't just talking about deadlifts. I came home energized, showered, and ready for the day. She was still in her robe, scrolling through Instagram. "How was your workout?" she asked absently. "Great. I signed up for 3 sessions a week." That got her attention. She looked up from her phone. 3 times a week? That's a lot of time. It's an investment. In what? In me. Something flickered across her face. Not quite concern, not quite irritation. More like calculation. "Well, just make sure it doesn't interfere with our plans." Our plans. When had I stopped having my own plans? That weekend, I tested something. She wanted to go to her sister's barbecue Sunday afternoon. Usually, I'd cancel whatever I had going on and tag along, playing the supportive husband role while she networked and socialized. Instead, I said, "Sounds fun. I'll probably stop by later. I'm meeting up with some guys to watch the game first." "What guys?" "Couple people from the gym. Carlos invited me to join their Sunday group." This was stretching the truth. Carlos had mentioned they sometimes watched games, but hadn't specifically invited me. Yet. "But we always go to these things together." "We do. And we will. I'll just meet you there around 4. The look on her face was priceless. Like I'd just suggested something completely unreasonable. "I don't understand why you'd want to miss the beginning of the party. I don't understand why I can't have my own interests." Another one of those loaded silences. "Fine," she said, in a tone that made it clear it wasn't fine at all. But I went anyway. Met up with Carlos and 2 other guys at a sports bar downtown. We watched football, talked about life, shared war stories from their marriages and divorces. Real conversation between men who respected each other. When I showed up at the barbecue around 4, she was deep in conversation with her sister's husband about his new boat. Flirting again, but not testing me this time. Just habit. I joined the conversation naturally, contributed some thoughts about marine engines from research I'd done for a client, and gradually redirected the discussion to include other people standing nearby. She tried several times to steer things back to private conversations with individual men, but I kept opening up the circle, making it group discussion instead of one-on-one flirtation sessions. "You're being unusually social today," she said later as we walked to the car. "Just enjoying myself. You seem different. More assertive. Maybe I'm just feeling more like myself lately." That night, as we got ready for bed, she brought up the loyalty test again. "I've been thinking about what you said. About Saturday night at the party. What about it? Maybe I came across wrong. I wasn't trying to disrespect you or our marriage." I stopped brushing my teeth and looked at her in the bathroom mirror. "What were you trying to do? I just wanted to know that you trusted me completely. That you wouldn't become one of those controlling husbands who gets threatened by normal social interaction. And what did you learn? That you do trust me. That you're secure enough to let me be myself." I rinsed my mouth and turned to face her directly. "You know what I learned?" She waited, probably expecting some romantic declaration about how much I loved her confidence or independence. "I learned that I've been loyal to the wrong person." "What does that mean?" "It means I've spent 4 years being loyal to someone who thinks loyalty is a test instead of a choice. Who thinks trust is something you prove by tolerating disrespect." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "I'm not done. I've been so focused on being loyal to you, to us, to this marriage, that I forgot to be loyal to myself. To my own values, my own boundaries, my own self-respect. That's not fair." "You're right. It's not fair. It's not fair that I let it happen. But that changes now." "Changes how?" I walked past her toward the bedroom. "You wanted to test my loyalty? Congratulations. The test worked perfectly. It showed me exactly where my loyalty belongs. As I got into bed, I could see her standing in the bathroom doorway, processing this new version of her husband. The version who didn't automatically put her needs first, who didn't accept manipulation disguised as trust exercises. For the first time in years, I fell asleep thinking about my own plans for tomorrow. Not ours. Mine. The following week brought a level of awareness I'd never experienced in my marriage. It was like someone had handed me glasses after years of blurry vision. Suddenly, I was seeing patterns everywhere. Monday morning, she was unusually affectionate. Extra kisses, compliments about my new workout routine, suggestions about restaurants we should try together. Classic behavior when someone realizes they might have pushed too far. But I also noticed other things, like how she checked my phone when I left it on the counter, casually picking it up to see the time while scrolling through my notifications. How she asked detailed questions about my gym sessions, wanting to know who I talked to, what we discussed, whether there were women in the group. The same scrutiny she'd accused me of lacking during her loyalty test. Tuesday evening, she suggested we grab dinner at that new Italian place downtown. Nice gesture, except she spent half the meal texting someone. When I asked who it was, she said, just work stuff, but angled her phone away when typing. I didn't make a scene. I just filed it away. Wednesday brought the most revealing moment yet. I came home from the gym to find her having coffee with her friend Rachel on our back patio. Normal enough, except their conversation stopped immediately when I walked outside. Don't let me interrupt, I said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. We were just talking about the Hendersons' divorce, Rachel said quickly. Too quickly. Messy situation, I replied casually. I heard he caught her cheating with her personal trainer. The look that passed between them was electric. Like I'd accidentally revealed I knew something I shouldn't. Actually, Rachel said, gathering her purse, I should get going. Thanks for the coffee. After she left, my wife was unusually quiet. No questions about my workout, no chatter about her day. Just silence while she loaded the dishwasher with unnecessary precision. That's when I decided to do some investigating of my own. Thursday, I took a half day from work and drove by her office building around lunchtime. Just curious about her routine, where she went, who she spent time with. I parked across the street and waited. She came out around 12:30 with two coworkers, both men. They walked to that trendy sandwich place 3 blocks away, laughing and touching arms the whole way. Same body language from the party, just a different stage. I followed at a distance and watched through the window as she performed her usual routine, leaning in during conversation, playing with her hair, maintaining eye contact just a little too long with the guy on her right. But here's what was interesting. She kept checking her phone every few minutes, like she was expecting something important. When they finished lunch, the two guys headed back to the office. She didn't. She walked in the opposite direction, toward the parking garage, checking her phone again. I gave her a head start, then followed her car. She drove to a Starbucks 15 minutes away, parked, and went inside. Through the window, I watched her order a coffee and sit at a corner table. 5 minutes later, a man walked in. Mid-30s, athletic build, expensive suit. They hugged like old friends, but the hug lasted too long. He sat across from her, leaning forward, completely focused on whatever she was saying. They talked for 45 minutes. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could read the body language. Intimate. Familiar. The way people talk when they share secrets. When they finally left, she walked him to his car, a black BMW parked 2 spaces from hers. They hugged again, and this time he kissed her cheek. Not the kind of kiss you give a casual acquaintance. I waited until they were both gone before heading home. She beat me there by 10 minutes, which meant she'd gone straight back to work after her mysterious coffee meeting. When I walked in, she was already changed into casual clothes, starting dinner prep like she'd been home for hours. How was your afternoon? I asked. Boring. Just the usual office stuff. How was your half day? Productive. Got some things sorted out. That evening, she was extra attentive again. Cooked my favorite meal, asked about my day, suggested we watch a movie together. All the things a guilty person does when they're overcompensating. During the movie, her phone buzzed 3 times. Each time, she glanced at it but didn't respond. After the 3rd buzz, she excused herself to use the bathroom and took the phone with her. She was gone for 8 minutes, long enough to have a conversation. When she came back, she was more relaxed, like whatever anxiety had been building was suddenly resolved. Everything okay? I asked. Of course. Why wouldn't it be? Friday morning brought the final piece of evidence I needed. She was in the shower when her phone, charging on the nightstand, lit up with a text message. The preview was enough. Can't wait to see you again soon. Yesterday was. I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. The loyalty test had been projection. She was testing my boundaries while crossing her own, playing games with our marriage while building something else on the side. As I got dressed for work, I felt strangely calm. Not angry, not devastated. Just clear. For 4 years, I'd been loyal to someone who was keeping her options open. I'd been playing by rules that didn't apply to both players. But that was about to change. I had some phone calls to make. The next 2 weeks were the most strategic of my life. Not vindictive, not emotional, just methodical. Like preparing for a business presentation where failure wasn't an option. First call was to my old college roommate, who'd become a divorce attorney. We met for drinks Thursday after work, somewhere downtown where we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. I need some advice, I told him straight up. Hypothetically speaking. He laughed. Nothing hypothetical ever starts that way. What's going on? I laid out the situation without emotion. The loyalty test, the patterns I'd observed, the coffee meetings, the secretive behavior. He listened without judgment, taking notes on a napkin. How long has this been going on? The obvious stuff? About 3 weeks since I started paying attention. But honestly, probably longer. I just wasn't looking. Any joint assets I should know about? Houses in both names. Savings account, checking account, both our names. Her car loan, my truck is paid off. No kids. Good. That simplifies things. He gave me a business card for a different attorney. Someone more specialized, more aggressive when needed. Someone who understood that not every divorce had to be a war, but you better be prepared for battle anyway. Second step was financial preparation. I opened a personal checking account at a different bank, started redirecting my direct deposit there. Not hiding money, just protecting what I'd earned. I made copies of all our financial statements, tax returns, property documents. Everything legal, everything above board, but everything mine. The hardest part was maintaining normal behavior at home. She seemed to sense that something had shifted, but couldn't pinpoint what. I was still polite, still helpful around the house, still sleeping in the same bed. But I wasn't emotionally invested anymore. And apparently, that was noticeable. You've been different lately, she said one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner. Different how? I don't know. Distant. Like you're somewhere else even when you're here. Just focused on some work projects. Is that all? I looked at her directly. What else would it be? She studied my face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I feel like you're mad at me about something. Are you asking me or telling me? I'm asking. Then no, I'm not mad. And that was true. Anger requires emotional investment. What I felt was more like disappointment. In her, in myself for taking so long to see it. In the 4 years I'd spent building a life with someone who was already planning her exit strategy. The following week, I started making subtle changes around the house. Not obvious ones, just small shifts in routine. I stopped making her coffee in the morning, not as a punishment, just because I was leaving earlier for the gym. I stopped asking about her day when I came home, waiting to see if she'd volunteer information. She noticed. Why don't you ever ask me about work anymore? Do you want me to ask? I want you to care. I do care. When you want to share something, I listen. That's not the same thing. You're right. It's not. These conversations were becoming more frequent. Little probes, testing to see if I was still the same husband who hung on her every word, who needed to know her every thought and feeling. I wasn't. The breakthrough came on a Saturday morning. She was getting ready to meet her sister for shopping, spending extra time on her appearance. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, outfit that showed just enough to be interesting. I might be late tonight, she said casually. We're thinking about dinner after shopping, maybe catch up with some friends. Sounds fun. Have a good time. She paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth. That's it. What else should there be? I don't know. Usually you ask which friends, where we're going, when I'll be home. Do you want me to ask those questions? I want you to want to know. I set down my coffee and looked at her. Really looked at her. Still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with. But not the woman I'd married, apparently. I trust you to make good decisions, I said simply. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same words she'd wanted to hear during her loyalty test. Except now I meant them differently. She left around noon, and I spent the day doing something I hadn't done in years, whatever I wanted. Went to Home Depot, bought supplies for a workshop project I'd been putting off. Spent 3 hours in the garage building shelves, listening to music, enjoying the satisfaction of creating something with my hands. She came home around 11, slightly disheveled, smelling like wine and cologne that wasn't mine. "How was your day?" she asked, kicking off her heels. "Productive. Built those shelves I've been talking about." "That's nice." She was already heading upstairs, clearly not interested in details. "How was dinner?" "Fine. Just caught up with everyone." I finished loading the dishwasher and followed her upstairs. She was in the bathroom, washing off makeup, avoiding eye contact in the mirror. "Which restaurant did you go to?" "That new place on 5th Street. You wouldn't like it." Interesting assumption, since she'd never asked what I might like. Sunday morning, I made my final preparations. While she slept in, I drove to Kinko's and made copies of everything: financial documents, photos of our life together, the business card for my attorney. I also wrote a letter. Not angry, not accusatory, just honest. About what I'd observed, what I'd realized about myself, and what needed to happen next. When I got home, she was in the kitchen making pancakes. Domestic bliss performance, right on schedule. "You're up early for a Sunday," she said, flipping pancakes with practiced precision. "Had some errands to run." "What kind of errands?" "Just taking care of some things." She plated the pancakes and set them on the counter. "You know, I was thinking we should plan a vacation. Maybe that trip to Colorado we talked about last year." "Maybe," I said, cutting into my breakfast. "Let me check my calendar." But I already knew my calendar was about to get a lot less complicated. Monday morning was going to change everything. Monday morning arrived with perfect clarity. I was already dressed and drinking coffee when her alarm went off upstairs. Usually, I'd have her coffee ready, breakfast started, the whole domestic routine that had defined our mornings for 4 years. Not today. She came downstairs in her robe, hair messy, expecting the usual service. Instead, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with a manila envelope and car keys in my hand. "Where's my coffee?" she asked, still half asleep. "In the pot." She stopped, processing this break in routine. "You didn't make it the way I like it." "No, I didn't." Something in my tone made her focus. She looked at the envelope, then at my face. "What's that?" "Your real test results." I slid the envelope across the table. She opened it with the same curiosity she'd had during her loyalty game, probably expecting some romantic gesture or apology. Her face went white as she read the divorce papers. "What is this?" "It's me passing your test." "This isn't funny." "You're absolutely right. It's not funny at all." She sank into the chair across from me, papers scattered in front of her. "I don't understand. We can talk about this. We can work through whatever's bothering you. You wanted to test my loyalty, remember? Well, congratulations. The test worked perfectly. That was weeks ago. I thought we moved past that." "We did. I moved past being loyal to someone who treats loyalty like a game." She tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "You tested whether I'd tolerate disrespect while you flirted with strangers. I passed that test by staying calm. Then you tested whether I'd notice when you started meeting other men for coffee dates. I passed that test too." Her face went from white to gray. "But the most important test was whether I'd finally choose loyalty to myself over loyalty to someone who doesn't respect our marriage. And guess what? I passed that one with flying colors. You followed me. I observed patterns. Big difference." She stared at the papers like they might disappear if she concentrated hard enough. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. You can't fix someone who thinks marriage is a loyalty test. You can only decide whether you're willing to keep taking the exam. I never cheated. You were practicing." The silence stretched between us. For years of marriage, reduced to legal documents and hard truths. "So that's it. You're just giving up." I stood up and grabbed my keys. "I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing myself for the first time in 4 years. I'm choosing my self-respect over your games. I'm choosing honesty over whatever this performance has been." "Where are you going?" "To work. Then to my attorney's office. Then to start the rest of my life." I headed toward the door, then turned back. "You know what's funny? You wanted a husband who wouldn't get jealous or possessive, who'd trust you completely no matter what you did. Well, you got exactly what you asked for." "What do you mean?" "I trust you completely now. I trust that you'll do whatever serves your interests. I trust that loyalty means something different to you than it does to me. And I trust myself enough to walk away from someone who thinks testing boundaries is more important than respecting them." She followed me to the door, papers still clutched in her hand. "This is insane. You're throwing away 4 years over a misunderstanding. The only thing I misunderstood was thinking I deserved to be treated like an option while treating you like a priority." I opened the door and stepped outside. "By the way, when you're ready to discuss logistics, My attorney's card is in the envelope. She's very thorough. As I drove away, I saw her standing in the doorway, finally understanding that some tests have consequences the tester never considered. My phone buzzed with texts all morning. I didn't read them. I had passed her test after all. I'd proven my loyalty was exactly where it belonged. With myself.